wheels from this era of Rolls-Royce to be interesting. Obviously, they cover the lug nuts, so they don't expose any of that unpleasantness. But the other interesting thing is just how many circles are involved. Obviously, the whole thing is a circle, and then if you look closer, there's a circle inside the circle, and then there's a red painted circle that goes around, and then there's another chrome circle and another chrome circle, just kind of to emphasize the point that this car is very luxurious and, well, round, I guess. Also interesting, you can see the valve stem cap has the Rolls-Royce logo on it. A nice example of attention to detail, even back in the 70s. Next up, we got to talk roof. Now, most of these Silver Shadows had this Landau top. It was sort of a vinyl top to make the car look like sort of a faux convertible to add additional classiness compared to a regular sedan. One of the interesting things I like about this one is it doesn't seem like Rolls-Royce could find a supplier to cover the entire top in vinyl. So instead, there's like 3 panels, and then there are these off-center seams sort of running down the roof of the car where they stitched it all together. It isn't exactly the classiest look, but it was the best they could do in the 70s. Next up, one other exterior item before I climb inside. You can see this car has this sort of silver trim stripe running down the side of it. Well, Rolls-Royce decided to hide the door handles by integrating them into the silver trim stripe, which is kind of a good idea, and it looks nice, although it's worth noting that they then kind of just sort of stuck the keyhole outside the stripe and ruined the entire aesthetic of hiding the door entry system. But regardless, they're there. Now, the interesting thing about the door handles is that you don't just pull them to get in. You walk up to the car and push this button, and back in the day when this car was made, but by modern standards, nobody's doing that anymore. And once we're inside, we move on to the door panels, and frankly, I could go for quite a while on the door panels, and so I'm going to. Unusual. The mirror control for the driver's side mirror is on the door panel. It's this little lever, you move it, and the mirror moves in a corresponding direction. That is unusual by modern standards, but it was pretty common at the time of this car. Not common at the time of this car is the fact that the mirrors are different. The driver's side mirror is a circle controlled on the inside. The passenger side mirror is a rectangle, and to control it, you actually have to walk over there and move it around from the outside of the car. Why is this? My guess is this Silver Shadow was only sold new with one driver's side mirror. Like many 1970s cars, the owner probably added the passenger side mirror later and went with a rectangular mirror for better visibility. And I'm not done with the door panel. In fact, far from it. Now you might be saying, manual mirrors, that's not that unusual. This car is pretty old, but here's the interesting thing. It has power locks. Push this little button on the door panel and you can hear the locks going. This car has power locks. It must have been one of the first cars with that feature. That was really advanced at the time. So Rolls-Royce could figure out power locks, but they couldn't figure out power mirrors, or even 2 mirrors. Seems like an odd decision. And another odd decision is the power windows. Take a look on the door panel. You can see all the power windows except they're unlabeled and they're just in a row. So it's hard to know which one is which. How do you know which one is for the rear of the car, for the driver's side, for the passenger side? It's just sort of a guessing game every time you roll down the window until you commit the order of those switches to memory. And speaking of the power window switches, I really like the fact that all of the switches in the door panel are sort of encased in a chrome silver plate. It's like Rolls-Royce thought to themselves, we can't just place the switches in there, we have to frame them in silver in order to get the appearance we're looking for. And I have to admit, it does look good, or it would have looked good back in the 70s. The other interesting thing in the door panel, maybe the most interesting thing, is that there is an armrest. That's not all that unusual, but in this car, it's adjustable. I've seen a lot of cars, modern, expensive luxury cars, with door armrests, and they're never adjustable. But in this car, you could adjust the door armrest until it fit your perfect height, so you could rest your arm while you were driving down the road. And speaking of the unusual armrests, let's talk for a second about the unusual headrests. This car has these giant, wide, overstuffed front seats, and then you look up to the headrest, and it's this incredibly tiny thing. It's like made for a child. The headrest could be like 3 sizes wider, and it would still not take up the entirety of the top of the seat. I don't know why they decided to go with such a small headrest, but I guess we should be lucky that we have headrests at all. A lot of cars from this era didn't. Next, we move on to some of the unusual switches and dials and buttons in this car. And as you can imagine, there are quite a few. I'm going to start with cruise control, which Rolls-Royce called speed control, because of course they did. To turn it on, there was this little button and switch setup to the right of the steering wheel. It was very weird. There was a switch to turn it on and off, and then on the left of the on-off switch, there was a button to engage it once you had it turned on, and on the right,